All right, so get ready to dig in because today we are diving deep, no pun intended, into the world of petroleum engineering.
Hmm.
And, you've brought some really interesting research to the table from RoleCatcher. They have that whole career deep dive section on their website.
Yeah.
And I gotta be honest, I learned a lot just looking through this
It's
stuff.
fascinating, isn't it?
It is, because I think a lot of times when people think petroleum engineer, they kind of have maybe a stereotypical image in their mind.
I think that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think? What comes to mind?
Well, I think a lot of people, they picture like a big oil gusher, like in the
Also
movies,
dramatic. So
that classic image.
exactly. And while those moments definitely exist and they're definitely part of the industry, it's really the stuff that happens behind the scenes that I think is it's really where the heart of this career lies.
Right. So it's less about roughnecks and hard hats and more about like strategic thinking and problem solving. Exactly. Petroleum engineers are the ones who are figuring out how to get that oil and gas out of the ground and
Yeah.
not just, get it out, but do it in a way that's profitable but also sustainable.
Okay, so there's more to it than just like drilling a hole and hoping for the best.
Oh, so much more to it.
Okay, so walk me through this because RoleCatcher really dives deep into this. The fact that, a single decision made by a petroleum engineer can impact projects worth millions, even billions of dollars.
No, absolutely. And they're using, cutting edge technology. They're analyzing geological data.
Mm.
They really need to have their finger on the pulse of global energy markets. It's a lot.
Wow, that is a lot of pressure.
It is.
Okay, so let's talk about the day-to-day for a petroleum engineer.
Sure.
Because based on what we're seeing here in RoleCatcher, it doesn't seem like there really is a typical day.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The work environments are incredibly diverse. One day you might be out on a remote drilling site in the middle of nowhere, and the next day you're analyzing data in a high-tech office.
And let's not forget about those offshore oil rigs.
Oh, yeah.
That has got to be one of the most unique work environments on the planet.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're miles from shore, surrounded by water.
It's not for everyone, that's for sure.
No, definitely not.
But yeah, it just highlights the fact that this is a demanding career path.
Yeah, and RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from that. They're very upfront about the fact that this is, long hours, high stress. You could be exposed to hazardous materials.
It's true.
This is a job that it takes a certain kind of person, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you have to be willing to work hard, that's for sure. And you have to be passionate about it.
And be able to handle whatever comes your way.
Yeah, you got to be adaptable. That's for sure.
For sure.
You never know what each day is going to bring, but that's part of the excitement of it.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
If you like routine, this probably isn't the field for you.
I was going to say, yeah, if you like, 9 to 5, this is not the job.
Exactly. But if you thrive on challenge and you're always up for an adventure, then this could be a really good fit.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, it's all about perspective.
It is. It is.
But there are definitely some big rewards that come with those challenges.
Right. And I think that's something that we should definitely touch on because
Absolutely.
RoleCatcher, they're not all doom and gloom.
No, not at all.
They do highlight some of the perks.
Oh, yeah, there are definitely perks.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, those perks, they make it all worthwhile.
Absolutely. The rewards can be huge, both personally and professionally.
So let's dig into that a little bit when we come back.
Sounds good.
All right, so let's talk about those rewards.
Yeah, the big ones, right?
Yeah, because, we talked about the challenges, we talked about the demands.
Right. It's not for the faint of heart.
But RoleCatcher is very clear about the fact that this is a career path that can be, financially very, very rewarding.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And not just financially, but in terms of job security as well.
That too, yeah. I mean, the world needs energy.
Always has, always will.
Exactly.
So yeah, you're right. RoleCatcher really emphasizes those attractive salaries and the fact that these jobs tend to be, pretty secure.
Makes sense. I mean, that you think about the global demand for energy, and it's only going to increase.
Exactly. But one thing I think is important to keep in mind is that the oil and gas industry, it can be, a bit cyclical.
Okay, so you're saying, like, it's not always going to be boom times.
Exactly. The economic downturns, they happen, and they can definitely lead to some instability in the industry.
Yeah, that's fair.
So it's definitely something to keep in mind. It's not all sunshine and roses all the time.
Right. There are trade-offs, like with any career.
Exactly.
So let's say someone is listening to this and they're thinking, okay, I'm up for the challenge.
Yeah.
The rewards sound good. I'm intrigued. What skills should they be focusing on?
That's a great question.
Because, I was actually surprised to see that RoleCatcher really emphasizes things like reading comprehension and writing just as much as, the hard STEM subjects.
Yeah. And it makes sense when you really think about it.
Okay, break that down for me.
So you could be, a total math whiz, right?
Right?
But if you can't read and understand a complex technical document, or if you can't communicate your findings in a way that's clear and concise, those technical skills, they're not going to get you very far.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, you got to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk.
I love that. That's so true.
Right. Because at the end of the day, petroleum engineers, they're professional problem solvers. And to solve those problems, you need to be able to do more than just crunch numbers.
Right. You got to be able to explain what those numbers mean, why they matter.
Exactly. You've got to get buy-in from your colleagues, from your clients, sometimes even the public.
So it's like you have that solid STEM foundation that's like the baseline.
Yeah, it's essential.
But then being able to communicate effectively, think critically, that's what gives you that extra edge.
100%.
Okay, so let's talk career progression, because RoleCatcher does a really good job of laying out like a pretty structured path.
Yeah, it's surprisingly structured when you really dig into it,
Yeah, it is.
which I think is helpful. It gives you kind of a roadmap.
Exactly, so you're not just wandering around in the dark.
Right, so typically you're going to start in an entry-level role.
Okay.
You'll be working alongside more experienced engineers, learning the ropes, getting your hands dirty, so to speak.
Paying your dues.
Exactly. And then as you gain experience, as you build your knowledge base, you can start to move up the ladder.
All right, so what are some of those like next level positions?
Well, you might become a junior engineer, then a senior engineer, and if you're really ambitious, you could even become a principal petroleum engineer.
Wow, principal
Wow.
petroleum engineer. That sounds pretty impressive.
It does, doesn't it?
It does.
But it's not just about the title, of course. Each step up comes with greater responsibilities, more leadership opportunities.
And probably a nice bump in salary along the way.
Most likely, yeah, but I think what's important is that there's room for growth, there's room to specialize.
You can really make it your own.
Yeah, you're not pigeonholed into one specific thing. There's a lot of flexibility, which is really cool.
Yeah, I like that.
And speaking of getting practical experience, RoleCatcher is very big on internships
Oh, yeah, they really hammer that home.
and certifications too.
Right, and networking.
All of it. It all matters.
And I think that's something that maybe wasn't as emphasized, a generation or two ago. But nowadays, it seems like having that real world experience, even alongside your degree, it's almost non-negotiable.
Oh, absolutely. And I think employers, they have every right to want to see that you can actually apply what you've learned in a real world setting.
Makes sense. They don't want just a theoretical expert. They want someone who can hit the ground running.
Exactly. And certifications, I think those are huge because they really demonstrate a commitment to professional development.
So it's like you're going above and beyond. You're not just like resting on your laurels.
Precisely. You're staying current, you're on top of your game, and that can make all the difference in a competitive job market.
Okay, so RoleCatcher, they specifically call out the Professional Engineer License and the Society of Petroleum Engineers certification as being particularly valuable.
Yeah, those are definitely two to have on your radar.
So if you're serious about this field, you got to get those certifications.
They show potential employers that you've met certain industry standards, that you're committed to continuing education, which, let's be honest, in a field that's as dynamic as petroleum engineering, is absolutely essential.
Right, because the technology's changing, the techniques are changing. You can't just like learn it once and then call it a day.
Exactly. You've got to stay ahead of the curve.
You got to be a lifelong learner.
100%. Yeah. Whether that's reading industry publications, going to conferences, participating in online forums, all of that contributes to your growth as a professional.
It's about becoming a thought leader in your field.
Exactly. Someone who is not just keeping up, but actually pushing the boundaries.
I like that.
And you know what's a great way to do that?
What's that?
Showcase your work.
Oh.
If you've done a cool project, present it at a conference, write a paper about it.
Put yourself out there.
Exactly. It might seem intimidating, but it's an incredible way to get noticed, to contribute to the advancement of the industry as a whole.
Yeah, and I think going back to what we were talking about earlier about those communication skills, that's where that really comes into play.
Absolutely. It all ties together.
Yeah, it does. It does.
It's not just about what you know. It's about being able to share that knowledge, to articulate your ideas in a way that engages and informs others.
Okay, so we've talked about the day-to-day realities. We've talked about the skills needed, the career path.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
It's a lot to process.
But there is one more thing that I think we need to address.
Okay, what's that?
And it's kind of the elephant in the room, or maybe we should say the wind turbine in the oil field.
I like that.
What does the future hold for petroleum engineering in a world that is increasingly focused on renewable energy?
Yeah, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, and it's something that I think a lot of people are grappling with right now.
Absolutely. And it's a complex question. There's no easy answer.
No, there's not.
But I think one thing is clear. We're seeing a global shift towards sustainability.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there are massive investments happening in solar, wind, all these other renewable technologies.
And that trend is only going to accelerate.
Exactly. And it should, but even with this big push for renewables, the demand for oil and gas, it's not going to disappear overnight.
Right, it's not like flipping a switch.
No, not at all. Oil and gas, they're still major sources of global energy.
And they will be for the foreseeable future.
Exactly. So we're going to need skilled engineers to manage those resources responsibly, especially during this critical transition period.
So it's not a case of one replacing the other entirely,
No, I don't think so.
but rather it's like a shift in how we approach energy production and consumption.
100%. It's about finding a balance.
And that shift, it requires a new way of thinking about petroleum engineering, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think, because the role of the petroleum engineer, it's evolving.
Okay, so instead of becoming obsolete, it's almost like the field is poised for this fascinating evolution.
Exactly. It's a really exciting time to be entering this field because you have the opportunity to be a part of that evolution, to be a part of the generation that redefines how we approach oil and gas extraction.
I like that. That's a really optimistic way to look at it.
Yeah, instead of fearing obsolescence, you're at the forefront of innovation.
And that innovation, that's key to ensuring a sustainable energy future, right?
Absolutely. It's about finding ways to meet those global energy demands, but doing it in a way that minimizes our impact on the planet.
And that's something that petroleum engineers will be at the forefront of.
100%. They're the ones who are going to be developing those new technologies, those sustainable practices.
This has been an incredibly insightful conversation.
It really has.
We've covered a lot of ground.
A lot of ground, but I think we've just scratched the surface, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think for our listeners, hopefully they now have a much clearer understanding of what this career path entails, both the challenges and the rewards.
I hope so.
But there's so much more to explore, and I know RoleCatcher, they have a ton of additional resources on their website, everything from salary surveys to sample resumes.
They really do a deep dive.
They do, and so if you're listening to this and you're feeling even the slightest bit intrigued, don't just stop here. Keep digging.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe someday you'll be the one designing those innovative technologies, those sustainable practices.
Now that's something to think about.
It really is.
All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and wrap things up. For someone listening who's maybe thinking about dipping their toes into this field, what would you say is the biggest thing they should keep in mind?
That's a good question.
Besides all the stuff we've already covered, of course.
Right. Well, I think it's really important to go in with like a realistic understanding of what the career actually entails,
Okay, so you're saying don't let the romanticized Hollywood version cloud your judgment.
Exactly. It's demanding. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, RoleCatcher definitely doesn't sugarcoat that.
And they shouldn't because you're dealing with, complex challenges, high stakes. The energy landscape is constantly changing.
So you got to be able to think on your feet.
Absolutely. You got to be comfortable with problem solving, with taking risks, calculated risks, of course, but still, you got to be willing to put yourself out there.
And to learn, right, like this isn't a career where you just, learn everything in school and then you're good to go.
Oh, no, not at all. This is a field where you're constantly learning, constantly adapting.
Which I guess that can be exciting too.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's the flip side, right? Yeah, it's demanding, but it's also incredibly exciting because you're at the forefront of innovation.
You're the one coming up with those new technologies, those creative solutions.
Exactly. The work you do, it has the potential to make a real impact, not just on the industry, but on the planet.
And I think that's what I find so fascinating about petroleum engineering, especially now. It's this intersection of technical expertise, economic realities, and environmental responsibility.
It's all connected.
It really is.
And for someone who's passionate about those things, who's, they thrive in a dynamic environment, they're not afraid of a challenge, well, there's really no better field to be in.
I love that. That's a great way to put it.
And, who knows what the future holds,
Sure.
right? But one thing's for sure, it's going to be interesting.
This has been awesome. Seriously, I feel like I've learned so much.
You too. Always learning.
And hopefully our listeners feel the same way, that they have a better understanding of what this whole world of petroleum engineering is all about.
Fingers crossed.
But if you're out there and you're like, you're feeling that spark, you're intrigued, don't just stop here. Go check out RoleCatcher's deep dive. They have a ton of resources, like way more than we could ever cover in this conversation.
They really do. It's a treasure trove of information.
It is. So yeah, go explore, keep learning, and who knows, maybe someday you'll be one of those engineers shaping the future of energy.
Now, wouldn't that be something?
That would be amazing. All right, well, on that note, I think I'll wrap things up.
Sounds good.
A huge thank you to you for lending your expertise to this deep dive. It's been a pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine. Thanks for having me.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of petroleum engineering. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those questions coming.